My name is Dana DeMeo. I run the engineering and product development department within Electromotive Designs. I'm here with my partner and general manager, Joseph Ambrosio, who's right over there. He decided to film this today, really so that they can make fun of me at the next corporate function. We'll see how that goes. And Eric Bemis, our sales director. So if anybody has any questions, just be an interactive discussion, that's fine. Feel free to interrupt, raise your hand. And we'll take some questions at the end too. So what I'd like to do first is start with a little hypothetical for you. Okay? I'd like you to imagine for a moment that you are the fleet manager of this fleet. And whether it's 10 trucks or 5,000 trucks, it almost doesn't matter. Generally speaking, you're feeling the same pain as everyone else, probably in the world, but let's focus on the country, where you have rising energy costs that are completely inelastic to you, which is really your fuel costs and your operating costs. And you have a fleet that is somewhat fixed. You really have to deal with the assets that you have until they live their normal course of life. And it's a very bad position. It's probably the worst that you'll ever have felt is right now. And the outlook is not very positive, right? Unless you can figure out a way to get oil back to $20 a barrel, $30 a barrel, which if you can do that, you probably aren't a fleet manager anymore anyway, okay? You're really kind of stuck and trapped in this very, very bad situation. EMD walks in, and we have something that is kind of new, and it's new for a couple of reasons. We offer the world's simplest and lowest cost retrofit system for buses and trucks. It's a hybrid system, which is not new technology, right? But what's new is the cost and the ease of installation. I'll get into that. And it can be a used vehicle, a vehicle that's on the road for a while, or it can be a new vehicle that you're purchasing, and you can add it as an option as it comes from the factory or from the distributor you have. And that's what we do. We're a local company. We're in Long Island in Ronkonkoma, New York. And we were founded in 2009. A lot of the principals have been involved in the business for 15, or Joe, I hate to break it to you, but it might be breaking almost 20 years. Our former company was Odyne. I don't know if any of you have heard of Odyne. Joe was one of the founders there. And we can go back further now to some other companies that we have founded and Joe have founded. And there's a lot of domain knowledge in this area. And when we formed EMD, we really stepped back from all the excitement of the technology and the excitement of what we could build. And we looked and said, what does the market want? Because a lot of other things we've done in the past that were funded by NYSERDA or other grant organizations, they were research-based. And when you're research-based, you're trying to create very new cutting-edge things. I mean, we tripled the fuel economy on mass transit vehicles, okay, by converting them to series hybrids. But the problem is that when it costs $500,000, nobody wants them, right? So we kind of realized that we wanted to create a company that had roots in technology, but actually an operating business model similar to your business, where you can go in and the capital investment by the customer has a return on investment and a payback period, so that they can actually monetize their investment in going green, and not just doing it for the sake of going green. So the team consists of about 10 or so folks who are directly work for EMD. We are a spin-off of a sister company called Intelligent Product Solutions, which is another company out in Ronkonkoma. And they're primarily a design and development firm, a lot of engineering consulting. And together we have over 100 folks now working on this particular project and other similar projects. So it's a growing, exciting industry, right here in the tri-state area. And EMD also has an office in Arizona. We have some personal feelings there that we think Arizona could be almost the Silicon Valley of EVs and HEVs. For many reasons. The climate has something to do with it, the temperament of the people there. A lot of old folks who want to drive locally, right? So, we actually have a strategic office there that's been very useful for us, and also serving all the way into California, which we know California really, really wants these things. So, our platform experience goes across the board. We're very familiar with light-duty passenger vehicles, pure EVs, all the way through to your heavy-duty vehicles, your school buses, mass transit. We've hybridized 80,000-pound garbage trucks and 80,000-pound wet garbage in it, I like to say. That's the rating. And, those vehicles save significant amounts of fuel. Where we try to focus now is in the vehicles that have a lot of start and stop. applications. So you see, one thing that I realized about a year after I started the company, is it's not the vehicle that matters. It's actually the location and the application. Because the same truck will behave completely differently if it's used on one route versus another. Maybe if it's one that drives on the highway a lot to get to the city and then there's local driving here versus purely just driving out of Nassau County, for example. And you have to pick the right application within a vehicle for the hybrid systems to make sense and monetize themselves. So that's why we're focusing on a lot of the things in the middle and some of the lighter duty vehicles as well, vans and other things that you'd be surprised how well our system performs there. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. So back to the hypothetical for a moment. So typically, is anyone here a fleet manager? Raise your hand, please. Okay, so I can say anything I want right now, and no one can refute what I'm going to say. That's great. Okay, well, maybe previous. Yeah, very good. So it's safe to say these are on averages, but 50 to 60% of your costs are in the operating expenses, specifically maintenance and fuel. Okay, and what happens is as that fuel price goes up, your budgets don't go up. In fact, you see your budgets are decreasing. You're really stuck in this horrible situation. Okay, you end up having to let go labor and other things that you don't want to do, and you typically have a fixed demand cycle too, because you have to pick up the children, right? You have to get the garbage. So there's only so much you can do to control your demand function as well. Even if you could go and buy a brand new hybrid that could save you money or electric costs, you don't have the budget for it. And you have to see through the fleet that you have. So when we use the word stuck here or trapped or all these words that we tend to use, they're quotes from our customers of how they feel. So EMD comes in and we offer a system. We take your vehicle for a very short amount of time. I mean, we're talking a day or two if things go well. And it comes back to you with a few extra boxes, metal boxes mounted in a few key places that it doesn't bother you anyway. And suddenly it saves fuel. And the most important thing here is you do not know it's even there. And that's another big lesson that I sort of learned about a year into this, is they don't care about the technology. And they don't care about the fancy screen like your Prius has to have, because people who drive EVs, they want the sexy, right? They want to see all of where their energy is going and understand that. The person driving that truck does not care. The fleet manager cares, but even he cares about dollars and cents. He doesn't care about these things. So we even have a small display that I'll show you. A lot of times we don't even put in, because you just want it to drive like a normal truck. Literally, where if it breaks down, you don't even know it broke down, meaning that our system stops working for some reason. You just stop saving as much fuel. Okay? Otherwise, it has to feel the same. There's a funny story. We installed a system in town of Oyster Bay, out of Long Island, and this was a cool system. It was a series hybrid system. So nothing like we do now. This was back in 2009. And we made this thing amazingly similar feel with our algorithms to a regular truck, because we knew they cared about it. But we made it a little bit faster because it felt good to make it faster, right? Like, I'm going to make this thing perform better than the truck that they had, because that's going to make them happy, okay? So after about a month, I walk in there and I go up to John, who's like the guy who's driving the truck. This is a guy who hugs his truck every morning and then he gets in it and drives it. He loves the truck, okay? He's been driving the same truck for 10 years, or maybe 7 years. And he gave me a piece of his mind because it's a little faster now. And he's worried the guys in the back are going to get hurt when they're hopping off and on the truck because he's not used to it anymore. So it's a big lesson learned that you really want to be careful with, okay? So back to our system. The product line consists of 3 different classes. We trademarked this system, emDRIVE. In the future slides, I'll show you the components of emDRIVE. Okay? And there's a light, a medium, and heavy duty. Today, we're focusing more on the first 2, and I can talk a little about why later. The light system, it's really all about large vans, pickup trucks, beverage parcel delivery, the smaller size vehicles in your class 2 or 3. The medium duty system, a little bit up from there, beverage, utilities, shuttle buses, some of your school buses, right? That's the class. We do it by weight, okay? The only difference in our system between all of these classes is really just the size of the batteries and the motors. The control electronics, all those things are very similar, and allows us to be very modular and scalable in our technology. So we built one core technology, and now we can apply that across all these different market segments. Okay. Now, once again, I told you, just because you have a utility truck doesn't mean it's good. You really need to go and make sure it works. So part of the intellectual capital of our company, which I never would have seen coming, when we formed the company, is that you really need to go and study the vocation and understand it thoroughly. So we have a process that we follow, where there's an interview process. We learn to ask the right questions. We even sometimes put some data loggers on the vehicles in their existing fleets, right? And capture some information. Not to learn about the vehicle, we know the vehicle, but to learn about how they use the vehicle. And it helps us and the customer. And what the customers like about that is it's management by fact. Because you have to make money here. I mean, some people will just do it to go green. I mean, think about it. Everybody from the President of the United States down to your local mayor is telling you, remember you're all fleet manager still, hypothetically, right? Is telling you that you have to go green. Half of them don't know what it even means. And half of them, if you just paint the truck green, they might be happy, right? But the people who really care are the ones who want to save money and lower their operating costs, right? So we'll do all those things. And you know what you call progressive auto insurance? It's actually happening. And they actually said, sorry, travel is still cheaper. I mean, it blew my mind. And they told me to go away. We've done that with customers. We said, look, in your application, you think it's great, but you know what? You're on the highway. Believe it or not, you burn 80% of your fuel on the highway. You might even know it. And we're not really going to help you on the highway. So even if we saved 100% fuel, you still couldn't monetize our system. And we shake hands, and you know what they usually do? They point us to the next truck in that fleet. Now that they have a better understanding of the application that actually works, and they respect you for that. So it's a little bit different of a business model.
Now departing.
So this is the technology. Our system has a display I mentioned before, not always used, not required. There's a small box called the vehicle gateway. It's something of our own ground-up design. Everybody's familiar with the little diagnostic port under your car, the one the mechanic uses to do an inspection or clear some check error codes. Well, of course, that's a whole network bus on there. So the problem, you ever notice how many pins are on that connector? I don't know if anyone's ever actually climbed under there. You guys probably have. There's like 18 pins under there. Why is that? It's because there's actually like 6 different protocols, or 4 different protocols. And the reason for that is because the OBD port, as it's called, is a conglomeration, like 25 years ago, of a standardization. And you know how they standardize it? They just took everyone's custom stuff and threw it on one connector, right? Okay? And that's kind of how it started. So the problem is every vehicle we encounter is different. So now we have to adapt to all these different vehicles. So the vehicle gateway does that for us. It's a piece of intellectual capital. We have some patents pending around how we use it. And essentially it allows us to quickly connect to most vehicles that have that port. If you go up into the higher classes, that's even gone. That port's not there. It's J1939, a different type of interface. And we hook up to that as well. The central controller is an off-the-shelf unit that we buy. It's essentially an engine control unit we buy blank. And then we have programming tools that we use to program all our algorithms onto. And this goes really, really far, where we use tools from MATLAB and Simulink, which the MathWorks makes very common tools in academia and automotive and just about everywhere. What a company that is. And we have full models of vehicles, of engines, of our hybrid system in simulation space, I like to call it. And we can simulate various conditions. And then we actually have all of our algorithms and our operating software programmed in that environment. And we hit a button and it shoots it down to this controller. I haven't written a single line of C code in 3 years. I can't believe it. It actually works. It auto-generates code for you. Okay? Not to give a pitch to MathWorks, but they're a very good company. And what's cool about it is I can take real data from the real world, like those data logs we talked about, feed it into my models and have it predict the types of savings. Or even better, I can have it optimize. You let it run for like 3 hours, and it'll optimize all your parameters and your control algorithms to try to get it to be best for that particular application. And then you can give the customer an idea of what they might save, and you go deploy. Right? So there's a lot of intellectual capital built around this seemingly simple system, just like yours. Right? You mentioned all the items in the box. I know the pain. Okay, except you guys bought that from someone else. We had to sweat through it. So the motor drive, everyone knows what a motor drive is. Okay, we buy an off-the-shelf drive. And the electric motor, it's the motor, nothing fancy. You see induction. But the key here is we buy the guts of the motor from a couple well-known. We couldn't find a motor that we liked off the shelf. It has to have a through shaft, which I'll show you a picture later why. It has to have connections on both sides. It's got to be sealed. It lives under the underneath of the vehicle. The drive shaft is typically. It's really dirty, filthy, right? And it gets all kinds of use. So it has to be sealed very well. We wanted to stay away from water cooling our systems because once you bring water cooling in, you bring in reliability problems. Someone's got to watch it. So we wanted to stay air cooled. So we ended up making our own motor. But we weren't silly enough to try to wind our own, stators. I don't want to insult anybody. If you ground your own stator, that's great. But we wanted to develop a product for low R&D cost. So we buy a rotor and a stator from a company, and we wrap our own housing around it that we custom design. And there's some ways we cool it too that are, we focus the air on it and things to try to keep it cool. It's all air cooled and it can exist in a sealed environment. So can anybody, you guys are EV folks, right? So I'm going to give you a little quiz here, okay? Can anybody guess, look at all the parts, right? A controller, a drive, a motor, what's missing?
Batteries.
What?
Batteries.
Batteries, right, okay. Why aren't the batteries on this slide? Okay. It's agnostic. When you use agnostic, it took my thunder. It's agnostic, right? This system will work with just about any type of battery. We will work with lithium-ion, lead acid, even ultracapacitors. Okay? The system can be plug-in or not, depending on the type of system we have. So there are, of course, batteries here, but it's not necessarily part of our kit, okay, or part of what we sell. I will say that where EMD is doubling down in a particular market segment, where we'll be announcing in a few months a new product that does include the energy storage, okay, and we're going to come up with an ultracapacitor pack, okay. Now, why ultracapacitors? Well, in this system, you know what? Let me do this first. Let me walk you through how it works, and then I'll talk to you about that. So, the motor is mounted in line with the drive shaft. Now, this is called a post-transmission parallel hydrant. Okay. A lot of you folks are familiar with EVs, so I'm not going to go too crazy in depth, but I have to at least go through the basics. Right? There's nothing novel about this. I think I found a textbook from 1950 that had this picture. So we're not claiming some IP around configuration. Okay. The idea is the motor gets inserted between the transmission and the differential, and the batteries or ultracapacitors or whatever get mounted on the chassis, so does the drive, so does the controller, and all those pieces. And it's very simple. When you hit the gas, it injects energy into the drive shaft, which displaces energy that would have come from the engine. So the engine burns less fuel. It's really that simple. Now, knowing when to inject it and the exact optimal time, and when the engine's at its most inefficient place, that's all our job. But in general, it's just a matter of we're putting torque into this shaft when you're launching, which is, by the way, when you're dirtiest, when the big puff of black smoke comes out of the school bus, and when the fuel gauge on the miles per gallon gauge in your car goes to 0, right, when you accelerate. Okay? Then, when you hit the brakes, instead of it going into heat, which is what happens today, we torque the motor in reverse, AC induction, no problem, regenerative braking, we're all familiar with it. And we recover the energy. We slow down the vehicle so the brakes don't have to work as hard. And we recapture that energy so it can be used next time. So it's not perpetual motion. It's not, some scientific, experiment here. It's very simple. Capture the energy that normally would be braking and put it into the drive shaft when you're at least efficient times. So in this type of system, what limits you is power, not energy. You only need enough energy to launch you the first time. And you only need enough storage to capture it on one braking cycle back to a stop. You don't need to carry any more than that. So with batteries, I'm talking, this thing will draw 600-700 amps on a launch and shove 600-700 amps right back in on a braking cycle. Has anybody ever seen a battery, the size of this bottle that can do that? It's not that common, right? And it's probably some advanced lithium-ion that's going to blow up in your face. So the problem is you got to go with bigger batteries, just so they can handle the current and the power. So now you're carrying around all this extra energy. Watt-hours, kilowatt-hours of energy that you don't really need, but you have, right? So we sort of, by the way, that works very well if you want a plug-in system, which some of our systems are, because in some cases you want the energy storage, you want the electronic fuel tank, and you want to carry that around, right? But the problem is, you try, I know you're installing systems, But you try to go to that fleet on the first slide and say, oh yeah, by the way, you have to put an outlet for every truck. And you have to put it by the truck so you can plug in every night. I mean, you know, you'll be seeing the door before you know. So we're trying to focus on a market where, once again, if they have to plug in, what does that mean? It means that they have to think about it, and we don't want them to think about it, right? So going to ultracapacitors, they're an amazing piece of technology. You can get a 3,000 farad capacitor. I said farad, not microfarad. You get a 3,000 farad capacitor, about this size, and the price is coming down. And it can handle 1,000 amps in and out all day. Barely even get hot. Internal resistance of 0.22 milliohms. 0.22 milliohms. 220 microohms. Okay? So it doesn't get that hot either. And it's exactly what you want. You know, you literally discharge the cap all the way when you launch and charge it back up all the way when you stop. And it literally does that. And by the way, if you keep doing that to a battery, what happens? You got to change it. Dies after 2 years. These things last hundreds of thousands of cycles, right? So the reliability is there. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that you know, that's sort of something that we're looking at, where we're actually creating a battery pack that has a lot of this in there and works with ultracapacitor.
How does that brake torque system compare to an OEM regen system?
You mean like
in terms of the sort of efficiency? So, for example, like a Prius, I believe the sort of the regeneration happens right by the brake pad, right?
Yes.
So yes, I'm just kind of curious how much efficiency you lose, or what the disadvantage of sort of this aftermarket solution.
Right. I haven't studied the Prius, so I don't know.
Okay.
I'm going to be honest with you. But what I can tell you is that when you're attached through the differential like this, you get the braking power. You know, we haven't had, the efficiency is lost more in the motor and the drive and the heating of those things. But what we have seen is sometimes we have to turn it down because you can't go through the windshield. I mean, it can really break you hard, okay? And we have seen City of Scottsdale, which I'll show you later. We did a garbage truck for them. They changed their brakes every 3 months. After 9 months, they realized, you know, we haven't like heard them squeaking or anything. And they pulled the wheel off and they still have the wheel on. I mean, you know, it's part of the return on investment equation. It's brake changes. Okay? So it does work, is what I'm saying. I can't speak for the efficiency. Yeah. So
on the braking system, though, you must have a limit because the drive shaft is not really ready to stop that loaded truck. Only the brake itself is
absolutely,
ready.
Absolutely right. I mean, this motor is only capable of a certain amount of torque,
right?
And the torque it can deliver is well underneath the torque that this drive shaft can handle. Okay, you can't drive the vehicle on this motor. You know, if you turn the engine off and just floor it, you might get up to 20 miles per hour, but you're not. You know, it's going to be slow, and it's not meant for that. So the answer is by design. It's not going to break a shaft. So you are still using the brake if you're braking hard.
Slowing down, let's say on the highway, you want to slow down to exit the highway, then you use the regenerative brake.
We'll use it anytime you hit the
But
brakes.
for an emergency.
Not even emergency, really. It's really just normal driving, too. I mean,
right.
The whole idea is that you hit the brake pedal, and we'll start regeneratively braking. And we have a way of, you know, braking harder with the harder you push all these things. But in general, if you're not slowing down enough, you just push more.
Right.
And then when you push more, the mechanical brakes will begin to engage. And part of the IP is how you make that feel seamless and all these things, right? So yeah, brakes are still there. Remember I said they were halfway there. They weren't completely, you know, still there. I mean, they're still braking as you do. That's correct. We only need to recover enough energy for the next launch. Don't forget that. We don't need to charge the batteries up with this. Okay. So, and to an application where they brake really hard, it's actually not as good for one that brakes nice and slow because it lets us kind of take it off as we need it. Right. Okay. So, any questions so far on this? I hope I'm not going too deep into this, but I know you guys are tech savvy, so you want to hear about it. So, just reading down the features, we talked about the low part count, quick installation. That's part of the cell. The vehicle doesn't disappear for 3 months and come back and barely work. I mean, it comes back 2 days later and it works beautifully, and you barely even know it's there. It's very, very important. Okay, keeping that cost down is what this is all about. Okay, the reliability is there. We have a couple of vehicles I'll show you that have been driving for many years now, and the maintenance part of this is very critical. You know, motors, drives, ultracapacitors, they don't really have much maintenance cycle to them, right? So the customers really appreciate that. It helps their maintenance. Doesn't affect the warranties. This is very common. People put things in drive shafts. You know, this is a very common thing to do. So we don't really upset the apple cart in any way here. And like I said, since the power is low, we're not going to be overstressing components. And flexible installation points, the system is physically small, there's a lot of places it can go. We do also offer some other options. I mentioned plug-in, there's anti-idling and a few other things that are there for certain specific applications. And finally, the installation itself, the way our company is set up, is we have a network of installers that have been trained on how to do this. And we'll sell them these pieces and then they'll do the installation. By the way, that's another thing we learned. I knew there was something else. We are not in the business of installing this system. We are not mechanics. All right? I mean, I used to go head to toe. My wife used to say, "What are you doing? I thought you were an engineer." No, you know, like, I mean, just, you know, we don't do that anymore. Okay? We don't need a big shop. So from a corporate perspective, we rely on others who already do this. If you're someone who puts snowplows on vehicles all day as an upfitter, this is perfect for you. There's a lot of folks out there who this is what they do all day. They take an existing vehicle and they add some aftermarket to it. And you walk in and say, "You want a hybrid that does that?" And we'll bring you all this business, and they get very excited. You know. And by the way, they have their own customer base that we tap. I mean, they get us customers, you know, because they go to all the people they sold snowplows to last year and said, "You want a hybrid?" Anyway, okay. So this is the demonstration fleet we have today. There's actually a few more than this, but these are the important ones. We also have our own vehicle that we did in Arizona that's driving today. That was our first one. That's EMD owned, you know, because we wanted to make all of our mistakes without anybody seeing it. So this is our first vehicle. That's past us now. So I mentioned the hybrid refuse truck. That's a PTO. Does anybody know what PTO stands for? Power takeoff. Okay. So our system, it's just motors, drives, and batteries, hybrids that you're used to. It doesn't have to just go on the drive shaft. The drive shaft is a nice, convenient place for it, but the power takeoff port is also convenient sometimes. And this has to do with when you're on the power takeoff and you're spinning at engine RPM, it's a different power curve on the motor. There's a lot of things there that can be good or bad depending on the application. Typically, you go on the PTO if, well, let's say, for example, the vehicle doesn't have a drive shaft, right? We have a school bus from Fairfax County, Virginia, that's driving now. That's a PTR configuration. Only on the public transit in upstate New York, that's an ultra capacitor vehicle. They're about to put that on the road in probably about a month. And this is a good example. This is a pusher bus. You know what pusher means? The engine's in the back, right? It's like, you know, the mass transit buses that are all in the city. Everybody has seen the drive shaft door of those? It's about, what is my leg? About this long. So you can't put PTR in there. And there's no PTO port because there's no need to have power takeoff on those kind of vehicles typically. So we have an engine takeoff there, where we actually mount the motor like an air conditioning compressor and belt drive. Because the power levels aren't that high. See, that's the beautiful thing about it, is we don't need that much energy to do what we want to do here. Okay? And that'll be coming out, like I said, in about a month. 2 Stony Brook shuttle buses. So if you go out to, I mean, look, I live 5 minutes from Stony Brook, but I'll say, if you go way out to Long Island, right? I'm not sure how many people are here from the city anyway who live here. Out in Stony Brook University, we've got 2 buses on their campus that are driving around our system, and they're working great, and they want to buy more, which is always good for us. And in our bellwether Verizon, that was installed on a Verizon van out in California. That was a PTR system as well, nice long drive shaft in these vans. And that is coming out this month. They already had it, but they're like putting racks or something in the back now. And once that's done, it's going to go into service. So that's the bulk of the presentation. I really just wanted to give you guys a feel for what's happening, you know, out of Long Island, what's happening with this company. And to me, and I know I'm biased because we founded the company and we're really enjoying ourselves, but I truly believe that it's a company that has a product that is alternative energy based, that is realistic in the fact that our cost function is tenable, and we can sell it at a price that everybody makes money. I mean, from us to the installer to the customer, so that when the customer goes to his or her board of directors and says, "I want to spend this money in EMD," he gets a yes, right? Okay, and you know, I really think we have something. So,
what's PTR, power takeoff?
Post-transmission.
Yeah.
Post-transmission.
Yeah, PTR is post-transmission. Sorry if I didn't say that.
ETO?
ETO engine takeoff. That's the one I described like an air conditioning compressor type application.
These are DC motors.
These are AC induction motors, three-phase
AC
AC induction, yeah,
Three-phase.
that's right. And you choose that because A, you can get regenerative braking, which I know you can do with DC too, it's a little more challenging.
Yeah, it's called threshold.
Yeah, and it's very cost efficient. I want you to think of it this way. Let me say one more thing, I'll get some more questions. What we've done here is, we've taken a system. You ever drive a golf cart or you look at the forklift trucks that are mass transported, they're in the warehouses? They're all electric, right? Okay? They have a battery, they have a motor, they have a drive, and they run all electric, they're basically EVs. Very, very low power because, you know, relatively speaking, they're small, they're light, and their loads aren't that heavy. What we've done is essentially tapped into that market of components, commercially available, proven components, off-the-shelf components, and apply them to a truck where now you're only a percentage of the energy, right? But you save fuel when you do that. Okay? So it allows that company to scale and to have components without spending much R&D dollars that are reliable and tenable right out of the gate, certified to operate in a vehicle application. So, sorry. Did I cut off something? Yeah.
Can you talk about the anti-idle and start-stop? I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, okay. So anti-idle is a very typical application where you spend a lot of time stopped, right? And you'd be surprised how many vehicles actually do that. And some of them we've had to turn away because, you know, the particular application we had, they weren't driving enough, they were idling a lot. And in those applications, you got to have an anti-idling system, where what you do is, it's a little bit more intrusive. You see, right now, I didn't mention this before, right now, when you go to install our system, you throw a few of those boxes on the vehicle, like we talked about. And you know what you do? You literally plug into the data port, and you take a ring terminal and you put it on the 12-volt battery. I mean, any idiot who's installed a car stereo has done that, right? Okay, myself included, about 20 times. So that's all you do. That's part of why it's so simple to install. Okay? When you go to start-stop, when you go to anti-idling, for example, now you're engaging the vehicle more. You have to cut in a little bit more. And it's also a little bit more chassis specific. But basically what it is when you come to a stop and the system determines, you know, it thinks you're going to be there for a little while, it'll actually turn off the engine. And then it'll start it again as you go. By the way, that's what your Prius does. And this is not a novel thing either there, right? But our system can totally do that. Especially the PTR mounted one, where now we can use it as a starter and crank the engine and start it without adding any more parts, right? And also have it act like the hybrid to go and also service that. Now, the stationary, there's another thing here with the start-stop. It's involved with anti-idle, where let's say you have the bucket truck, like we talked about before. I showed on the first slide, there's a fleet of bucket trucks, right? Those vehicles, you know, they don't drive too far, right? But when they come to a stop, they spend 8 hours at that location. And there are guys up on the poles, you know, fixing wires or whatever. And, I mean, you ever have them park in front of your house, and the thing idles at 1,200 RPM, which is not idle, by the way, okay? Because it's got to spin the hydraulic pump. And it does that for 8 hours straight. And the person driving it, you know, when he's up there the whole time, he lets the engine just run, okay? It also gives you air conditioning in the cab, and heating in the cab, and auxiliaries. And part of the system also would allow you to operate down on batteries. So when you get there, you can stop the engine and you can run off your stored energy. And there you need to have a system that's got a lot of ultra caps, don't make sense there, so you need batteries there. So the point, a very long answer to your question, is our system is modular and scalable to hit all those applications. Now, right now, we're focused on the one I mentioned with the ultra capacitors and a certain class of vehicles, but that's sort of where our future grows. You know, where once we sort of start getting some revenue and we start getting sales moving in this area, we're going to expand to other areas. Right.
Dana, what's the added weight of the system?
You know, with the ultra, by the way, I'm glad you brought that up. Ultra capacitors, I mean, literally, you know, they weigh nothing compared to the batteries that you used to use. So the other benefit is weight, right? I would say it's less than 1,000. What do you think, Joseph? 1,000 pounds now? With the ultra caps?
750 with batteries and about 400 with ultra
Yeah.
capacitors.
Yeah. So we stay within the
With batteries,
GVW.
400 with ultra capacitors?
400 with ultra capacitors, yeah.
We stay within the GVW of the vehicle. You know, it's a small pack that kind of gets hidden away.
The ultra cap, you operate it at what voltage levels?
Well, the system operates between, it's a low voltage system. that operates between 60 and 110 volts, generally speaking. We typically use 40 or so ultracaps. The ultracapacitors are rated up to 2.7 volts each, so it's a series string. And we typically operate them between 1.6 and 2.4 volts, 2.5 volts, something like that, each. And that's another thing I forgot to mention, I'm glad you brought it up, is our system is also low voltage. Okay? It's not 300 volts, it's not 600 volts. So when you go to a fleet manager or an installer and you explain it's a lower voltage system, they're more comfortable with it. Now look, you touch 110 volts, you're still jumping, okay? But it's not the same as 600 volts. And there's a lot of value added in the fact that we're using a low voltage system.
Just back to the weight, is it the same for all three of the light duty, medium duty, heavy duty? Or does the weight fluctuate?
The weight fluctuates because the battery size could change. You know, but that the middle mark is about 750 and a little bit less, and then a little bit higher.
What is the price of one of these packages?
Let's just say that we price our system to produce a return on investment to the customer within between 2 and 4 years. So when you look at how much fuel we save versus how much they spend on the system, our ROI analysis and theirs will show it between 2 and 4 years. And we found if we go much more than 5 years, it's sort of, Joe likes to put it, it's out of the lifespan of the person making the decision, right? And they can't see the benefit to the end, right? So that's where we try to price the product, is in that range.
And is there a warranty on this product overall?
Yes,
From you?
it's from both, and it's part, I'm glad you brought that up. Part of the benefit of using all those off-the-shelf parts like we talked about is you get pass-through, flow-through warranty coverage. So all those pieces are already warranted by the original manufacturers. And then we'll tack on our own warranty on top of that. And then there's also extended warranties that can be offered as well.
So what is that? I mean, what do you give with the package and then what else?
It's
Is it a
based
year?
It's based 1 year,
1
and
year.
you buy additional warranties on top of that.
And what is the typical cost to outfit a truck or
Like I mentioned, it's at a place where the return on investment between 2 and 4 years. I don't really think I can speak about the pricing right here. Sorry.
We talked about it.
Yes. Another question is, have you actually showed this to Edison's fleet managers?
I don't know, that's true.
Yes,
And what's the response?
we're working on it.
around?
I see.
I want you guys to think about something for a second. The ROI thing, like, never forget that. I mean, look, I'm an engineer by trade, and I just want to build the best mousetrap, you know, and we triple fuel economies, but they didn't sell. So you never forget about the monetization of this, right? So for example, we have some financing that we're working on now, where, because it's also a pretty tough pill for a fleet manager to swallow, to even have to put all the cash out
At any
to
price.
make their money back. You know? So there's opportunities there where if it's financed properly, you could actually save more fuel than your principal interest payment on the finance. So you take out a loan and then you start making monthly payments, and the amount of monthly payment you make is actually less than the amount of fuel you save. So that your payback is instant, essentially. You're sort of saving money right from the get-go. That's where it really gets interesting. And we're starting to work on those types of things now. And our cost is low enough, and interest rates are low enough right now, that those type of things are possible.
So Danny, your system can be used to power a bucket truck for 6 hours, 8 hours in a work configuration? without the
Our-
engine on?
What I would say is, our intellectual property and capabilities would allow us to develop a system like that.
But this product
But
doesn't.
this product does not do that, and it's only because we're not going after that market. So really what I was talking before is I was trying to give you all a breadth of just what type of capability do we have as a company, and what could we do. And it's not like we start from scratch. I mean, we've got all the pieces now. We have a toolkit. So it's really a matter of we pick this particular market with the PTR and the certain applications to go after first. And once that gets established, we'll start hitting the next ones and the next ones. And all the pieces are there.
So I understand the anti-idle. What's the start-stop thing then?
Care to talk about it, Joe?
Oh, sure. Just really just engine off when you come to a stop for a few minutes.
Oh, so that's-
the engine auto starts. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Oh,
While you're in traffic, you're still in
so
gear.
that's not
Anti-idle.
That's not anti-idle.
Exactly.
That's just saving fuel.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
What are your thoughts on the regular automotive market for the regular consumers?
Regular, well, we're not in the consumer
I
base.
know, but just
Right.
in general, like, how does that play? Is it completely, there's no ROI, or is there some future outlook?
Well, you mean like Priuses and those types of vehicles, or?
No, just regular vehicles converted to this kind of model.
It's
consumer
tough.
vehicles. Yeah.
It's tough. See, the other benefit, but I'm gonna try to, I haven't studied it enough to actually give you a good answer. Maybe Joe will speak in a minute, maybe he has a better answer. But what I will say is, the other benefit to going with the commercial fleets is they really operate the trucks. You know, they run them hundreds of thousands of miles before they scrap them. So the more they drive, the more they save, and that's how the ROI model makes sense. It doesn't really happen so much, you know, with
People change cars. a lot.
yeah, it doesn't happen a lot. You know, and these days, come on, let's all face it, guys. We're not buying electric cars right now to save an extra $1,000 at the end of the year. It's hard for that to happen yet. I think it's going to get there. We're doing it because we're excited about it. So a lot of people buy these cars. It's not necessarily for ROI. It's personal preference. It's a lot of things. It's being green. It's all good things. And there is some savings. I'm not trying to say that. I'm not debating that at all. But when you have someone who lives and breathes and feels that pain I talk about every day work, life is getting worse for them, not better. And, you know, oil could be $150 a barrel. You laugh, but, you know, remember Dana said it? You know, notice, by the way, they always say, whenever you make a prediction, either give an amount or a time, but never both, right? So anyway, you know, it's not going to go to 40, so that's a better model for us. Yes.
About the accounting model, let's say the depreciation, let's say the accounting part was the vehicle is a certain amount of time for it to depreciate. Will this add life or time to that, and they can still write it off?
We haven't modeled that.
Okay.
We have not modeled that. Right now, we're looking at vehicles that are somewhere either new, you know, where literally we've had ones that, like the school bus was brand new. I mean, it came to still had that new smell in it, you know, to about 3 or 4 years old. Once you start getting to vehicles 5, 6 years old, you know, it may not make as much sense to go and do this system. So there's definitely a sweet spot within there. But, you know, I didn't mention this before because I only usually say this when I'm pitching to investors. But I hope you guys understand there's 100 million vehicles on the market. Buses and trucks. You don't pay attention, you don't notice it until you really look around. They're everywhere, right? There's 100 million registered trucks and buses and commercial fleets between class 3, or maybe that's class 4 actually.
2 through 8.
2 through 8, thank you. Okay. So we've figured out that around a third of that would benefit our system. So there's a huge market for this, and you know and they're going to be there for a very long time. So, any more questions?
What is the one most expensive component of your system? Is it the motor?
Energy storage. It's the energy storage.
Energy
storage.
So the super cap.
Right.
Yeah. We all know energy storage is the Achilles heel of all. I mean, whether it's an electric car or it's the most expensive, the most tenuous, right? You have to manage it. It can be the most dangerous, and there's no difference here with us.
And one of the reasons why we're so attracted to the capacitors right now is that the cost of materials, you know, for the devices is really, really cheap. I mean, it's aluminum carbon, you know, so it's got the quickest potential to get the price down, and it's happening. I mean, you know, you look at Maxwell and some others, I mean, the cost has dropped in half in less than 3 years. So, I mean, you know, it's literally the size of a soda can, and you're talking about $4 or $5 of materials, you know, so it's got, you know, great potential for cost reduction.
Any more questions? All right, well, I hope it was useful. Hope it was a little enlightening. You guys get to see something that we're doing out here.